So after being convinced that Islam must be the true religion, what steps did you take? What was your ultimate journey to accepting Islam? Can you tell us about the phases?
Okay. As I was reading through the Quran, but also reading through tafsir, explanations and commentary on the Quran, as well as all the different books I could find on Islam, it was when I would find something that didn't make sense, I realized after thinking about it for ages and ages that it wasn't that the text didn't make sense, but I had brought into it an assumption, and the assumption was leading me to not understand it properly, right? And so my process of going through the Quran began to purify me of my assumptions that I brought, my baggage that I brought into Islam, right? And so alhamdulillah, my steps for encountering Islam and becoming a Muslim was really one of first, I was interested, I was intrigued that this sounds like something that could be true. To the step of I adopt it as a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is something that you believe is the best explanation, but you're not 100% certain. Maybe there could be a better explanation, but from all the available evidence you have, it's the best one. And after going through and my knowledge increasing more and more and more, and I started to ask questions like, well, what if there was let's say I was going to create a religion and I was going to take Islam as a basis, but I'm going to change something of it. Would it be just as good or better? And as I did that process, I realized that every time if you make any kind of change to Islam, it ends up with a contradiction or something that doesn't make sense. And so I realized then that how Islam explains the universe, human existence, the existence of animals, the planets, everything, whether it's pleasure and suffering, and whether our finite lifespan we have, all these things were answered in Islam to the point that there was actually no other possible answer that could answer all of this. So then I eventually came to the conclusion that Islam is the only possible explanation for reality. And then I had yaqeen, then I had absolute certainty in the deen of Islam.
What was the last thing that you said, okay, now I'm going to become a Muslim tomorrow? What happened that you decided?
Well, it was at 14 years old. And that was when I adopted Islam as, you could say, a hypothesis, which is it's the best explanation that I know of. So as a human being who is searching for purpose, I'm obliged to follow the best explanation presented to me, and I don't see any contradictions in it, so there's no reason I should say no to it. I didn't know that you have to testify the shahada in a formal kind of way. I just thought it was something you just believe in. I said, okay, well, I believe this, and so, yeah. So my shahada was simply going up to my mother and saying, Mom, I think I'll be a Muslim. That was my shahada, basically. And, my mother, from a secular background, but a liberal secular background, religion wasn't so important. So she didn't really think it was a big deal. She thought just a passing phase. Because, parents see their children go through different phases and they try different things or different hobbies. So she thought this was just maybe a hobby I would do. After almost 30 years later, I think now she realizes that it's a bit more than a hobby. Right?
Life itself.
Yeah. So, alhamdulillah. Follow. I think.
If you had a chance to speak to all the non-Muslims in the world, what would you like to say to them if you have just 1 minute?
I think I would say the same thing I'd want to also say to Muslims in the world, which is don't blindly believe what you've been taught by your parents, your culture, your society. Question it for yourself. How do you know what you're following is true? How do you know that all the things that you've been taught are true about everything? And I don't just mean about questions of science or what have you, which of course we ask questions anyway. It's about what you should and shouldn't do. What is your life for? Ask questions about this. How do you know that what you've been taught is true? And if you do know, if you investigate it and you discover the truth, why don't you implement it in all areas of your life? So ask questions and don't blindly follow.